Take it away, Catherine.
Thanks, Nima. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly market recap. I'm Catherine Murray. Well, we are seeing markets trend broadly lower today. The Dow down by over 500 points, or close to 1.7%. The TSX also down by about 1.8%. This, of course, follows a big bounce in the markets yesterday. In fact, stopping a 6-day slide where the TSX actually lost over 6%. And the S&P yesterday was up by about 2%. But again, we're not able to hold these gains. And that is the consensus view, which is don't buy the dips. There's still a lot of concern out there in the market in terms of the U.S. Federal Reserve raising rates too aggressively, and that will in fact cause a hard landing, not a soft landing. And that is what is getting priced into the market day after day. There's also, of course, a concern that the earnings need to come down, and therefore, what multiple do you want to put on the earnings, what market multiple that is? We are also, of course, hearing from one of the Fed presidents out of Cleveland saying that the central banks need to be very attuned to risks that something might break. In other words, perhaps we might be too aggressive. And don't forget, we have a global group of central banks all raising rates. So you have to think about what that does to the valuations of risk assets and, of course, currencies. That's another big focus here for the marketplace today. I also just want to point out that the U.S. 10-year yield is above that 4%. That also always puts jitters in investors' mindsets. Away from that, there's a lot of focus, of course, globally on a number of events, specifically the UK. Prime Minister Truss did defend her unfunded tax cuts, trying to, of course, boost their economy there. We also had German flash inflation numbers that came in hotter than expected. And importantly as well, OPEC Plus has begun talks on an output cut ahead of next week's meeting. So therefore, again, concerns on the supply side front. In terms of stock news, I would note that Apple did get a downgrade over at BofA. That stock looks to be down by about 2% on that analyst news. Starbucks increased their dividend by just over 8%. And BRK, Berkshire, boosted their stake in Oxy, Occidental Petroleum, so the energy space, to just under 21%. And importantly as well, in terms of how we're looking at the market and the broader macro backdrop, CarMax, ticker there is KMX, missed on their numbers. That stock down by about 20%. So again, we also want to look at these stocks in terms of what the macro read is. Obviously not good as it relates to looking at CarMax's results. Away from that, as we take a look at the TSX, as I mentioned, it did finish higher yesterday, but it has been down by over 6% over the past 6 days, and it's down once again today with the broader markets. Also importantly to note, which is getting a lot of attention, that US dollar is strong versus most major currencies, including the Canadian dollar. But I've said this before, when you look at the weakness in the Canadian dollar, which again, it is lower versus USD today, it's telling you that more and more people are concerned about the Canadian economic outlook. There are recession risks here. In fact, the Globe and Mail discussing the fact that with our trading partners heading for a recession, a soft landing here in Canada is perhaps less likely. I would point out that July's real GDP rose 0.1%. That was a little bit better than expected, of a negative 0.1%. But nonetheless, the economy is in fact slowing. And importantly, BMO has a survey which showed 81% of Canadians are worried that the economy will in fact tip into a recession by year end. Interestingly as well, I know I say that word a lot, but Alberta is expected to hold up better because of their oil revenues. And the BOC, just to put this in your notebook, is still expected to hike by 50 basis points at the next meeting. No abating there, which again continues to put pressure on the consumer. Following a transparency review by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, this is important, the BOC, the Bank of Canada, has decided to show their meeting notes following their BOC meetings. That, of course, is what the Fed does, and this is in the vein of transparency. Away from that, as it relates to our energy industry, LNG Canada's CEO says and has emphasized that a strong case for doubling our nat gas exports as Canada's first LNG export terminal nears completion in BC. Remember, there's a lot of people around the world that would love some of our energy. Speaking of energy, lastly, CNQ was upgraded to the action buy list over at TD from buy. Nima, I'll leave it there. Back to you.
All right, thanks for that, Catherine.